Is this working? Yeah,
It's
okay.
working.
Hey guys, really
Hello.
great to be here. My name is Felipe.
I'm Leo.
We are the founders and creative directors of Porto Rocha, a design agency based in New York, but we are from Brazil. And today we want to use this time really to introduce ourselves. And this presentation is going to be very, very simple. The storytelling is very simple and something that you guys are probably familiar with. So that's how we structured everything. So who we are, where we're from, what we do, how we do it, and most importantly, why we do this. Starting with who we are, basically. So that's me, Felipe. That's pretty much the best outfit that I ever had in my life. I think I'll never top this one. I'm from Brazil, I'm from São Paulo. I don't know if you guys have been to Brazil, know São Paulo. It's the biggest city in Brazil, but I'm from São Paulo. From a very, very like poor neighborhood in São Paulo. That's where I'm come from. So it's really, really great to be here, very far from my home. And I lived my whole life in São Paulo. I studied design and I worked in advertising because in Brazil, advertising was the only way you could basically have a living and work in design to a certain extent. And my life really changed when I was 18 and I got a scholarship and I moved to Italy to live in Treviso and work for Benetton in Fabrica. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Fabrica, but it's the creative lab from Benetton. And it was really my first experience living abroad, having to speak English. I met a lot of people from everywhere, and I felt really good. And that same feeling that I had there, like meeting people from everywhere, is what eventually brought me to New York, where I moved eventually. And this is a photo of me. I'm naked. We don't need to talk about it. This is from when I used to work at Sagmeister & Walsh, a design studio in New York. I worked there for over 2 years, and I worked in a few different studios. And after Sagmeister, I also worked at Spotify, which was great because music is the thing that I love the most. So it was really, really great to work with music for many years. And then eventually I met Leo, and then we started dating, and then we started living together. And then there was that moment that I had a freelance job, but it was too much for me to handle by myself. And then I was like, maybe I can work with Leo, but not sure if that's a good idea, because maybe that's gonna ruin our relationship. I didn't know, but we decided to try. And actually, it worked out, and we started working together. And I feel like that's a way that we were able to connect to each other in a further level, and that's how Porto Rocha started. And then since 2019, we have a studio called Porto Rocha in New York.
All right, my turn. That's me, wearing a Speedo. I'm from Rio, that's why, and I still wear a Speedo to this day. So yeah, Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. That's where I was born and raised until I was 9 years old. Eventually, I also moved to São Paulo, just like Felipe. So in a way, we have very similar trajectories, sort of coming from Brazil, studying design. But I actually moved to New York when I was 18, and I went to a college called School of Visual Arts. I started as an advertising major as well. Eventually, I realized advertising was not really what gave me passion. So switched to design, and have been a designer ever since. And then throughout my time in New York, I got to work at several different design studios and agencies of different sizes and different areas of focus. But for the majority of my time after college, I was at Collins. I was there for almost 5 years and eventually became a design director there. And then, I guess Felipe already told the story, but we ended up dating, connecting, and opened Porto Rocha as a creative duo. So Porto Rocha, one question we get a lot, why is it called Porto Rocha? It's very simple, actually. Porto is my last name. Rocha is Felipe's last name. And we thought it sounded nice.
Sounds
and fancy, right? So we were like, let's do it. It sounds like fashion.
It sounds very European.
Yeah, exactly. As two Brazilians coming together, let's make it sound fancy and European. But in reality, it's not really just about me and Felipe, not at all, actually. After being in business now for 4 years, we have a team of 28 people. This is just our New York team. And really, everything we do is about the people we have in our team. And it's really about the collaborative efforts of everyone that makes part of Porto Rocha.
We're very biased to say our team is very, very talented. It's very international. That is super important to us because we think by having people from different places is how we can make design and how we can come up with solutions that are very different and expected. And I want to take a moment of this talk just to say everyone's name because they're all so important to us. So very quick, okay? Natalie, Nicholas, Luciana, Joseph, Elisa, Marek, Shay, Nathan, Claren, Martin, Natalia, Marcus, Gabby, Eyal, Annie, Thales, Ido, Samantha, Nicholas, Bryce, Vincenzo, Giovanna, Josh, Hamilton, Kyle, and Roshita. That's Porto Rocha. And we are here because of them. And I'm very happy to have them in our team, for sure.
So going on to the next section of the presentation, where are we? And, well, we're in Bushwick, Brooklyn. This is where our studio is at. For those of you that have been to Bushwick, maybe you have an idea what that looks like. But when you picture a studio in New York...
Yeah, let's close your eyes.
Yeah.
Let's do an exercise. Close your eyes. Imagine New York.
New York, yeah. Design studio in New York.
Design studio in New York, how that looks like.
And you're going to work every day, and you're walking down the streets, and that's where you're going. Okay, we can open our eyes, and we'll show you what it looks like. So that's pretty much where we go to work almost every day when we're not in New York. This is where we walk in. Not the cutest in the world, but still is a great place. And ultimately, it's a place that we designed for ourselves and for our team. It's not a place that we designed to necessarily have clients over all the time, but really creating especially nowadays where collaborating in person is such a luxury, I would say. We wanted to create a place that really fostered that sort of environment where you can collaborate together. So this is what it looks inside. It's much nicer than the exterior. But as I was saying, we really designed the space for us to be able to come together. It's entirely optional to go to the office. You can work from home if you want to. You can come in if you want to. And yeah, I think it was our vision of how we wanted our space to sort of work like.
Yeah, we have happy hours every first Friday of the month. So if you guys are ever in New York, just, get into contact. Actually, we're having a Halloween party on Saturday. If anyone wants to, just take a flight, go there.
All right. So this is where we're geographically, physically located, but the other question is, where are we located on a less sort of literal way? And this is, as we were thinking about opening the studio, sort of trying to position ourselves as a business. Where do we fit in? And the way we like to describe that, and it's really kind of related to our philosophy as a business, is in the intersection of the world of design and culture and business and strategy. So we're right in this sweet spot between these two worlds where we're small enough to be a tight design studio that really cares about design and craft and detail, but we also have the robust sort of structure to be able to offer really insightful business strategy and making sure that every decision we make is kind of rooted in that. And this takes us to another idea, which I kind of just mentioned maybe a little earlier than I planned, but craft and scale. And what that means is attention to detail on the one hand and big picture thinking on the other hand. Another idea, high quality and accessibility. And this is something that personally, both of us, and I think the majority of our team really cares about. How can we bring design to as many people as possible? And high quality design, especially when we think about high quality design being so exclusive, sort of traditionally, something that's not attainable to most people. How can we use design and branding, which is sort of what we specialize in, to reach as many people as possible? And then another idea that we talk a lot about, and I think this is the last one, is iconic and utilitarian. And this is particularly true when we're talking about branding. Thinking about how can we create brands that people love, that people talk about, that people resonate with, that people remember, but on the other hand, also recognizing the role of design as a utilitarian tool. Meaning we don't want design to get in the way of the experience, and we don't want design to be sort of self-serving to the designer, but really thinking about how can we serve whoever is using the work that we do. So moving on to what? Next section.
What we do.
What we do, we're a brand design agency.
Yeah, we work primarily with branding. And instead of explaining what branding is, we decided to bring three very different projects that are branding projects, just so you guys have a sense of the type of work that gets us excited and we're proud of.
So the first project we brought is Nike Be True. So it's the visual identity for Nike's LGBTQIA+ platform. And this is a project that to us was really meaningful, really important to who we are and things we care about.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys noticed, but...
Yes, we're gay. And this is what Nike Be True used to look like. They've been around for quite a few years now. And personally, we don't think there's anything wrong with this. Actually, I think it's a really nicely executed logo. But when they reached out to us, Nike already had the vision that they wanted to be more than just a pride campaign that happened once a year. Like most brands do, they add a rainbow to their logo, they call it a day, and they're like, all right, we're allies. And rather than that, they really wanted to position themselves as an evergreen platform that's in support to the community. So that was the task and that was the challenge that we wanted to sort of help them solve.
Yeah, and that's very important for Nike because I think out of all the industries, all the environment, sports, it's one place where we need to do a lot of changes to. It's a very homophobic place. It's very, people feel a lot of pressure doing sports. And Nike has the power to change a little bit of that. So for that reason, this project
for sure,
was
and break so many
important.
boundaries. Nike has the reach, like we were saying earlier. Reach to us is so important. The way we can use design and all the time and effort that we put into our work to be able to reach people and actually change culture is so important. And this is one of those projects that really allowed us to do that. So just to go back one slide, one of the issues we immediately identified was the fact that, well, Nike here in this case is associating itself with the sort of traditional gay pride flag, which technically there's nothing wrong about that. But when we think about the complexities of the LGBTQ community, it's really much bigger than that. It's much more fluid and multidimensional than just the gay flag. So just looking at this alone, we thought we need to sort of help them switch to an expression that goes from just the traditional rainbow flag to something that is inherently way more fluid and always moving, and this notion of movement and progress. So one of the things we did was develop this library of gradients that they can use and the potential for it to be in motion and creating these different ticker systems that feel very vibrant and energetic and always in motion, which then also got translated into physical applications. And then going to the logo itself, this is what Be True used to look like. Our changes were actually quite minimal, but there were significant, I think, sort of changes. We tried to de-brand it And rather than a logo, we just wanted it to be a statement. And then we signed off with the Nike swoosh with the gradient that we were just talking about. And another really interesting aspect of what we proposed that Nike was really into is this idea that we can actually redesign the logo every year. The proposal was, can we actually bring a calligrapher, a typographer, a designer to reinvent the Nike Be True logo every year? And this sort of thinking was actually applied to every aspect of the brand. So how can we take every opportunity we have to actually bring the community in and be very mindful of the resources that we're hiring? So this was one of the executions that a calligrapher from Brazil, Lebassis, actually we commissioned him to work on this and was part of the first year. But we also commissioned different illustrators like Sophie Birkin, Oni Leslie, Machu from Japan, Franco Egalite from Montreal, Canada, as well as all the different photographers we brought in. So basically, in every step of the way, we were looking at this brand identity as a platform to bring people in. And I think this is a huge sort of shift in how we approach branding. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But to keep going with this case study, because we have a lot to go through, another thing we were very sort of aware of is that the LGBTQ sort of fight, for lack of a better word, is a real movement to fight for rights and not just a colorful celebration like a lot of brands kind of treat it. So we looked at a lot of references where we had this really sort of powerful, unapologetic, visceral representation of...
Yeah, it started from struggle, it started from a lot of fight. And we wanted to be respectful with that as well.
Exactly. So to us, typography was a really important aspect of it as well. So we took advantage of Futura Bold Condensed, which is a font that everyone recognizes as Nike's, to use that space to promote the voices of the community and use all of the media space that Nike has access to rather than have Nike speak, have the community speak. So that was another sort of big aspect of this campaign. And here are just some of the photos that we took. This is Bretman Rock, photographed by Luke Guilford, and how that all comes together through the systems. We also looked at retail design, retail spaces, inside, outside. And here you can see all these different elements coming together.
Yeah, and we worked on this project, I would say maybe 2-3 years ago. And since then, Nike, their internal team, they are updating the system. And it's really, really nice to see how this identity has been evolved. And that's how we like, that's our favorite thing, when we work on a project and we can see the new brands coming to life and evolving within time, and that's very gratifying to us for sure. Okay, so that was project number 1. The second project that we want to talk about is the identity that we worked on for Sundance Film Festival. Sundance is the biggest independent film festival in the US, and the way Sundance works, or used to work back in the days, was every year they would hire a studio to come up with a new identity that was completely different from the year before. But at some point they realized that that's not sustainable anymore, because back in the days, just a poster was enough to communicate an identity, but now Sundance is so big that they need to communicate throughout the year. So they really needed a system that's much more flexible, not just for like just 1 week when the festival is happening, but something that works evergreen throughout the year. So actually this project was interesting because it was 2 in 1. We had to come up with this evergreen identity that was something that's very flexible and something that is more like an umbrella for all the years that are coming, but also the identity for 2023. And so we come up with this identity that's very, very flexible. It's very inspired by film strips, has this idea of framing. So here you guys can see the logo really works as a portal framing device. And it's so interesting how it connects with the content itself. So a few examples of applications. We also worked on their digital expression, their website. It's interesting because a lot of the movies that we worked on, they're now available online. So Fair Play is a very good one if you guys need any Netflix tips.
And a big consideration for this was really thinking about this sort of framework that would hero the films themselves. So that was, as Felipe was describing, the first part of the challenge was how can we create an identity that's present and has a point of view, but also doesn't overshadow the work when we think about it as a platform to promote film.
Yeah, and also one thing that it was interesting is like this notion of like indie film festival changed so much. A lot of the films that they have right now are so mainstream and they're so different. So we also had to come up with an identity that would somehow take in consideration all these different films, movies with different expressions, different styles. So this is the evergreen system that works pretty much for every film style. And then moving into the same identity but apply it to 2023. This is how the identity looks like. Next.
Right.
So it's pretty much the same thing, but one thing that it was really challenging is that like the identity of the year, it needs to be very exciting, very graphic, but it cannot feature any footage or any imagery because they don't want to be biased to any of the films that are part of the festival. So we had to somehow translate the feeling of being at Sundance without using any photography. And it was the first year that Sundance was back after COVID, so there was a lot of excitement around Sundance. So we really wanted to create this identity that's very immersive, really this feeling of going back to the movie theater and how we feel about it, very visceral.
It needed to be fun and celebratory and colorful.
Yeah. So some visuals. Also, Sundance, for those who don't know, it's in Park City in Utah. It's a city that is a lot of snow. So color played such an important role in the identity. It was really nice to see like the city that was so white in snow just mixed with color from the identity. But then besides this more expressive side of the identity, there was also the more functional one. So this was pretty much like selecting each color for different theaters, signage, a lot of signage, more than 100 different signages. Thousands, maybe, I don't know.
That's you. With the same, oh no, you're not wearing the jacket anymore. You were wearing this jacket outside. Anyways.
This is an overview of the signage system. So this project was really nice because it was both, right? Like in one side it was very expressive, very playful, but then it had to be very functional and utilitarian as well. Going back to the Venn diagram that Leo was just explaining, like this notion of like iconic and utilitarian. I do think Sundance is a great example that has both. And finally, this is the trailer that we worked on.
All right. So, thank you. So last project that we wanted to share with you guys to show, again, that range of what we do is, and this is perhaps the latest project that just came out back in September, which is a new cultural landmark in New York City called PAC NYC. And some of you guys maybe have seen this, or maybe not, but this is basically the final piece of the World Trade Center site in Lower Manhattan. This is what it looks like. It's this really epic new building that was just finished. It's this beautiful cube of marble that lights up during the night.
It was 20 years in the making.
Yeah, many redesigns, many architects that worked on it, but finally came to life. And I guess we were lucky enough to be hired to work on the identity of this building. which kind of taking a quick sidetracking a little bit, to us is so gratifying thinking about the fact that we're Brazilians. I've been living in New York for 12 years, but we've always, we're immigrants, and we've had so much hardship trying to get visas and being accepted in New York, and now being hired to design the identity for one of the most important landmarks recently is sort of, I think, so gratifying and surreal, to be honest. But anyways, this is what it looks inside. And one of the super exciting aspects of this building is that it's entirely flexible and modular. They have these crazy hydraulic systems that allows them to basically change the setup of the theater in infinite numbers of ways, depending on the kind of performance that they're offering. So, of course, as we're thinking about it, this was one of the starting points for how we were thinking about the identity, as well as the fact that it is a perfect cube and a perfect square of a building. So what we did was sort of develop this entire typeface using that square format as the basis for it. So starting with the logo, PAC NYC.
Yeah, we also worked on the naming and the whole strategy of the new Performing Arts Center.
That's a good reminder, yeah. A lot of back and forth in terms of the naming. We ended up landing on PAC NYC, which was great because three letters, symmetrical. And then we wanted it to be really iconic. So honestly, we just proposed a square, which sounds kind of crazy, but at the same time, it's one of those things that only a building like that can own. And they love that idea, but especially when we think about the potential of a much more sort of flexible system that showcases everything that's happening inside that square, and this sort of dynamic representation of what's inside and outside. And
yeah, it's interesting because, of course, there is a connection with the architecture, but for us, what's most exciting is what it's happening inside. And this identity also allows us to talk about whatever is happening inside of the building.
Exactly. And in terms of motion, part of our inspiration was, again, the sort of cubic form of the building and how we can bring that sort of perspective into how things get animated and transition. This is the typeface I was just talking about that we designed from scratch. And a lot of the inspiration is trying to create something that feels timeless and iconic and bold, but also super contemporary and also very much New York. So it has that sort of grid-like structure to it. So yeah, how that comes to life. And a few different applications where we're bringing that typography and photography, working on tone of voice as well. And to us, tone of voice is just as important as a color palette. And it's such a, if not more sometimes, the way a brand speaks is just as important as how a brand looks like. And another sort of challenge and ambition for this theater, especially when we think about the marble cube, which is sort of inherently intimidating, was how can we feel really open and inviting and make sure that people feel like they belong there and they can come in. So that was a big part of the strategy. So we can look at imagery that portrays the performers, people, and so forth. And another big part of it was the fact that ultimately people are going there to watch the shows. So we wanted to make sure the system was flexible enough to be able to communicate all these different sort of dance performances, musicals, operas, poetry, or whatever, and make sure that, again, the system can also take a sort of supportive role to the performers themselves. So yeah, looking at how that translates to social media, out-of-home applications, banners.
Yeah, finally, Michael.
And then Michael Bloomberg.
Bloomberg, who was the main stakeholder of
the main donor of the building that we had to also talk to and meet with and convince that this was the right solution. So anyhow, then the question becomes, all right, so we just showed all this work. How do we do it?
Yeah, how do we do this? Which is a question that people often ask us, like, okay, you guys come up with this amazing solutions, but like, how do you guys do that? And of course, we do have a process, and this process has so many phases, and these are just some of the phases, especially for these more complex projects that we had to go through. And if you guys work with branding or design, you guys are familiar with a lot of these expressions and terms. But these are just, an overview of the phases of work that we had to go through when we work on a branding project. But more than anything, besides having all like these phases of work, we do believe that working in design, it's also a process of just trying things out. It's a process of trial and error. Because being a design, we believe it's as soon as you are a design, you have to make decisions. We're making decisions all the time. And these are some of the decisions that we make when we work in design. Should it be left or right? Should we go sans or serif? Black and white or colorful? Big or small? The corner should be rounded or sharp? Is this design maximalist, minimalist? Is this gonna be more serious or playful? Quiet or loud? Gridded or floaty? So that's the thing, we're always deciding things. Every design move when we design, we're making a decision. And we make thousands of decisions every day. And that's how we do it. And that's our life. We keep doing it. Another sketch, another one. We try things out. And then eventually it feels right. But a lot of the work that we do, it's also not right. Sometimes especially like when we start working on a project, we do a lot of ugly stuff. Of course, like we don't post that on social media, but part of the process is like going through that. Yeah, so I think this talk, it's really like to demystify like this idea of like, okay, the perfect design, they're gonna sit in your desk and then come up with the perfect solution. That's not how it works.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because all of us here, we're so used to consuming all the finished products that we see online, of the case studies that the studios are putting out, but we very rarely see the process. And sometimes it can be intimidating to see that and not understand how you got there. But ultimately, like Felipe was saying, we do so many ugly sketches along the way that no one ever sees.
Yeah, and we keep trying out, and the more experienced you are, it's easier for you to make decisions and arriving the right solution, but you still have to go through that train of thought of like, okay, this is what I want to do. And to just exemplify it, we're gonna just show one of the many InDesign files from Nike Be True, this project that we just presented, just so you guys have a glimpse of the work that we do. And this is pretty much like a time lapse of designing becoming what it is. So a lot of things, like trying different fonts, trying different colors. There's no secret. That's how we work. And eventually, we arrive in a solution that feels right, but that's how we do it. There's no secret. And we like to make decisions. It's part of our job to make decisions. But more than anything, we also want to make decisions that go just beyond what is visually right or wrong. We also want to have a say and make decisions on things that are more just meaningful for our brand. So these are just like a series of questions that for us is super important to talk about and to ask ourselves always when we work on a new project. And we just wanted to listen and share with you guys. So does this really make sense when you design something? Is this really what you want to do? Well, what is the impact of this design solution? Is this just beautiful visually, but like, what's the meaning behind it, Who are we speaking to? But most importantly, who aren't we speaking to? Are we truly improve the product experience? Something that is super important. Really thinking about design that goes, like just more than surface level. Are we engaging the right talent?
For this, I think the Nike project.
The Nike one is a great example. Are we appropriating any culture? something that is becoming much more and more important for everything we do. We always need to ask ourselves, does this identity have lasting power? Are we causing any unnecessary harm? More and more important every day. For everything we do, we need to ask this question for sure. Yeah, that's
So
the
next
last one.
is why. So why is perhaps the biggest question we got, especially 4 years ago, when we were starting to talk to friends and colleagues. We were planning to open this design studio, and people were like, why are we doing it? And I think it was a really important question for us to ask ourselves to make sure that we felt confident enough to make that move. The big question is, does the world need yet another design studio? When we think about just how many talented agencies and studios are out there, do I want to just be a part of an agency, or do I want to open a new one and offer something different? So in 2019, we opened Porto Rocha. That was sort of, that pivotal moment in our career, I guess, where we decided, yes, we want to leave our full-time jobs and do something based on everything we've learned, which was a lot, but also in everything that we learned not to do. So what we did was we actually wrote down 5 different sort of principles of why we thought it was necessary for us to have our own agency. And the first one is that we want designers to have a seat at the table. And this to us is so important and sort of a pillar of what we do. We don't see designers as just tools. If you've worked in agencies before, you might have experienced this, but you have the creative director, you have the strategist, you have the stakeholders, and all the smart people in the room making the critical strategic decisions. And then they call the designer last minute and they're like, we need you to take all these great ideas that we had and we want you to make it beautiful. That's not how we see the role of a designer. We think designers are inherently strategic thinkers, and they should be part of every step of the way in making those critical decisions. And we think that's such a huge shift in how the role of designers should play in a work environment. And we apply that to every step of the way in our work process as well. The other thing is that we want to connect brands with people and culture in meaningful ways. And that one is also sort of a shift when we think about traditionally what branding is about. Traditionally, in the modernist sort of times, branding was all about repetition and recognition through repetition. You have a logo, you logo stamp everything enough times that people are going to look at that logo, recognize it, and eventually build a connection to it. But now in 2023, that simply doesn't make sense anymore when we think about just the myriad of channels and all the different ways that brands are expected to communicate with people and the frequency at which these brands are communicating with people, which basically means if all they did was repetition, they would so quickly become monotonous. And the role of a brand today is not just to sell, but is to engage with people in meaningful ways and to be a part of culture and react to the environment and the context within they live with. And within, did I say that right? Within, they live with, whatever. Okay, third point. We will always be a design-led company and not a business that happens to sell design. So Felipe and I were both graphic designers. We have no business or administration knowledge or experience at all. And we decided to open a business. And we make a lot of business decisions. Like I guess we're slowly becoming business people.
Yeah, of course we work with people that have a lot of knowledge in business.
Yes, but at the same time,
not us.
Well, I guess what we're reacting to is all these agencies and environments where we've worked at, where the people in power, they have no idea what they're selling. They have no idea what the value of design is. So these big decisions that shape the culture of an entire business are driven by someone's idea of, which is usually driven by numbers,
Sales, numbers,
results.
let's
and
sell
so
more,
forth.
let's be bigger.
And to us, when we plan the year ahead, we're not thinking about how much, what's our revenue, what are the numbers, what's our growth expectation. Yet again, we're only 4 years old and we have a team of almost 30 people, and it worked out. And the reason it worked out is because our focus is in 2 things. One, really focusing on doing good work, prioritizing good design over maintaining peaceful client relationships, making sure that we care about what we do. And then the second part is really caring about people and really spending time building the team, individual growth, making sure that everyone in the team is, has a has a path forward.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I
Over
realize
time.
we only,
Go faster now.
well, we only have 3 more slides.
2 more. This one is very personal, and I think it's super important to us. We want to prove that queer and Latino immigrants can run a global design agency in New York, which is still like, we feel we are still the exception, but we want to, by proving that we're, like we can, fight with other designers, and probably like the other owners, like they don't look like us, but we really can prove that that's possible, and in a way inspire new generations. And actually, like being here, talking to you guys, it's a proof that that's possible, So that's a very important thing to us. And then lastly, hopefully that's not very cheesy, but that's how we want to finish this presentation. We love each other, and I think Porto Rocha, we didn't start this company just because it was a business opportunity or because we met on LinkedIn, and then it was because we started dating, and then eventually it made sense for us to run a business. And the same love that we have for each other is the same love that we want to also, give to all the employees and create this environment that it's very healthy. And I think in times where people are questioning, like AI is going to take over everything, you're going to lose your job, I think there's one thing that I believe AI still won't be able to take over, which is really like this feeling of like working with love and working with people that you love. And that's part of the reason we are here, because we love each other. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.